some technical difficulties, but I think I just worked through them. And in a moment, there might be something that's very much like a show. Could happen any moment now. Once you've all streamed in here. All right. Let's see if I can find my beloved. There you go. There we all are. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and it's the best time you've ever had. But if you'd like to take this experience up to levels that nobody can even understand with their tiny, smooth human brains, all you need for that is a cup or mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called simultaneous sip. It happens now. Go. Oh, that was terrific. Some of the best. Well, I'd like to start off with a happy birthday to Dr. Funk Juice. Dr. Funk Juice, I hope you're in the house today. One of my favorite fans, online friend. So happy birthday, Dr. Funk Juice, another Gemini. Well, the electric vehicle startup called Fisker filed for bankruptcy. They were going to try to give Tesla a run for their money, but it didn't work out. You know what was wrong with Fisker? Didn't have Elon Musk. You know what else was wrong with it? There was already a Tesla. It's kind of hard to be the second amazing electric car company because everybody who wants an electric car, they're like, let's see, go with a proven company who's definitely going to be here next year with a full nation of electric charging stations, or a brand new startup that might be gone in a year, and they're gone. That's a really hard ask to get somebody to buy that second kind of electric car. Although the Rivians are pretty popular out here. I don't know if they're going to make it or not. But the other problem is the name they picked for their company. Compare these two company names. Tesla. And you think of invention, and you think of, history in America, and like America greatness, and it's a good name, and it's like Tesla. It sounds good when you say it. Now say the other one. Fisker. All I hear when I hear that name is fist, her. No, I don't want a vehicle that makes me think of fisting somebody. I want a Tesla. Thank you. I don't have either one, but I like the name Tesla. Speaking of that, Reid Hoffman, one of the original PayPal mafia guys, and one of the early associates with Elon Musk and David Sachs and those guys, went on to found LinkedIn, but he told a humorous story about how he was one of the first people that Elon Musk asked to invest with him on SpaceX. And Reid Hoffman, one of the top investors in the world, said no to investing in SpaceX. And he laughed about it, obviously a mistake. But he laughed about it because he said, in my defense, this was Elon Musk's pitch. I'm going to put a turtle on Mars. I guess the early idea was if he could put some living creature, and I guess he picked a turtle. If he could put a turtle on Mars, then he could prove that the rest would work too. So I don't know about any turtles on Mars, but I love the fact that Reid Hoffman heard Elon Musk say he wanted to put a turtle on Mars and then turned down that investment. Whereas Reid Hoffman said, that's not really a business. It's not a business to put a turtle on Mars. Well, it's a business now. Joke's on him. Well, have you heard of this term digital twins? It means creating a digital version of what's in the real world, such as a human heart. If you want to learn how to operating hearts or whatever. You can create a digital one. I guess the military is creating digital environments where they can test their military equipment. So they can create a fake world to test the real world weapons, but it'll be a fake version of the real world in the fake world. Now, I've said this a number of times, but it never was salient until now. If you don't believe that we are currently a simulation as opposed to a base reality, what's going to happen when we start building our own simulations and there's more than one? Because that's less than a year away. And the key is that we build a simulation that has characters, creatures in it that look like humans. But here's the key. They have to look and act like they don't know they're in a simulation. What happens when we do that in less than 1 year? In 1 year, you'll be able to spy on a civilization of little creatures that are just software that kind of look and walk and act and talk and think like humans. And they will tell you that they're real, and they will believe it, whatever belief means to a digital entity. What happens then? Well, what happens to your disbelief that we could possibly be a simulation when we create in our own world more simulations than there are base realities if you think we're the base reality? At what point do you have to release on the possibility that we're base reality? At some point, the statistics of it are going to be really overwhelming against the idea that we're original species. So wait for that. That's fun. I talked about this before, but it's still funny. Australia has this new ministry of basically changing men's behavior. It's actually the Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behavior Change. I mean, it says it right in the title. They want to change men's behavior in Australia, the government. Do you know why? Do you know why they want to change men's behavior? Because women are perfect. Yeah, they don't really need that in Australia because the women have reached a level where, wow, you really can't get much better than that. I mean, that's incredible. Ladies, you go, girls. But the men, the men. Ugh. Have you ever been to Australia? The men, ugh. They're putting shrimps on the Barbie and working their jobs and raising families and stuff. Loser stuff. But the women, nailing it. So if you're an American guy and you're sick of these American women who you think have some flaws, I don't. I think they're perfect. But you might think so. Isn't it nice to know that you can just go to Australia, an entire nation full of, it gets better. An entire nation full of women who don't need any help. They're already exactly where they need to be. But wait, it's better. You're going to be competing against a nation where even the government says all the men are defective. You're going to be like a god. You could go down there with your little American pot belly and your bad personality, and you would walk like a god among the Australians because apparently their women are in good shape, but they have no men. No men. All the men need to be changed first. So that's my dating tip for the day. As you know, we will soon all have robot dogs. The military will be first. China is making their robot dogs, and the United States is testing robot dogs. And I'm not too worried about robot dogs because, the battery of a robot dog isn't really going to last that long. So you can't really take the robot dog on much of a mission because you have to, plug it in all the time. So you don't have to worry about robot dogs with the current situation of the batteries don't really have much life. So don't worry about robot dogs who have flamethrowers and machine guns. The next story is about a technology that will make your battery life 100 times longer. Oh, shit. We're dead. The robot dogs are going to last 100 times longer. That was sort of the only thing they needed. But it turns out that Apple has got some kind of supplier that's got a New solid-state battery using oxide-based solid electrolytes and lithium alloy anodes, which is, if they'd listened to me, how long have I been screaming this at the top of my lungs? It's like, stop using those traditional batteries. Don't you know you should have oxide-based solid electrolytes and lithium alloy anodes? Like, if I've said that once, I've said it a million times. But it turns out that that works, and it promises 100 times more battery life and also killer robot dogs. So you get those two things. Let's see, what else we got going on? Lots of good stuff, robot dogs. Turns out that here's a study. You tell me, is this a scientific study or is it backwards science? Backwards science. They've discovered that teenagers who are lonely, when they're teens, of course, that makes them teenagers, being teens, that it predicts the use of future psychiatric medications. So in other words, if you've got a lonely teen, the odds of them being at some point treated with pharmaceuticals for their mental condition is much higher. Now, let me think. Is it the being lonely that causes the mental problems? Or could it be that you already have some mental situation which is causing you to spend less time with other people? Because are lonely people alone because they want to be? I don't think so. I think they want to be with other people, but those other people are rejecting them for one reason or another, or they're rejecting themselves in some cases. But I would suggest that people who have loneliness have a certain kind of mental makeup that would suggest that they would have some mental problems later. Are we seeing that loneliness causes mental problems, or are we seeing that people who already have mental problems have trouble making friends and keeping them? I'm going to say this one's a coin flip. Could go either way. Well, I am happy to report that there's a new bicycle seat that it's an improvement. It's got a sort of two cheeks. So your two ass cheeks sit on the bicycle seat and the two ass cheek parts move independently as you pedal. And I looked at that and I said, I didn't really think that bicycle seats needed to be improved after hundreds of years of bicycles. I mean, what was wrong with the old ones? I mean, the old ones would make you sterile. I mean, we know that the old bicycle seats can make a man sterile. And a friend of mine rode bicycles until he had a problem that is described as anal fissures. Anal fissures. Now, this is not related to any electric cars. That would be anal fiskers. But this is anal fissures, F-I-S-S. Completely different than the car. Although both of them are a pain in the ass at the moment. Now, if you've ever ridden a bicycle, you know that if you ride a bicycle for long with a traditional seat, it feels exactly like a prison rape when you get off it. But now you have the butt cycle. It's called the butt cycle. So after 50 years of making bicycle user interfaces that feel like prison rape, they've decided, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we make a bicycle seat that doesn't look like it's designed to go up your ass, but rather maybe stay on the outside somewhere, on the butt cheek part. But like if you're designing the bicycle seat to really get up in there, like they do currently, probably there'll be some problems later on. Well, we learned that Google Maps got rid of the scenic route option. They used to tell you the scenic way to get from one place to the other, but they realized that that was racist because the scenic route, guess what, doesn't go through poor areas, and poor areas, unfortunately, have a lot of diversity in them. So really, scenic route is really the white route, so you can't just have that. So they got rid of the feature that would tell you the scenic way to get to where you want. Now, I only saw this in the news today, but I was starting to be suspicious because the other day I used Google Maps to go to Walnut Creek, and it gave me a route through Gaza. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, Gaza? That feels like it's out of the way. Now I know they got rid of the scenic route, and now they just put you through the most dangerous place you could possibly go. So there's some good news. There's a trend going viral, which means that at least 3 people have done it. And don't believe anything about anything going viral if 3 people have done it. But we're seeing people taking pictures of their restaurant receipts where they're writing, if you vote for Trump, he'll make your tips untaxable. I think it was Mike Cernovich who suggested making stickers. So you don't have to write it. You could just put a sticker on there. Trump would make this untaxable, which is a hell of a good idea. I love that idea. However, I would like to give my restaurant owner, since I used to own some restaurants, I'm going to give you some restaurant tips. Tips about tips. You ready? If you ever plan to eat at this restaurant again, do not indicate that you're a Trump supporter. I don't want to have to complete the sentences. Can we just leave it there? If you ever plan to go back to the restaurant, don't be wearing your MAGA hat and don't be acting like you're a big Trump supporter, because the people in the kitchen may have a different opinion, if you know what I mean. Just trust me. Don't ask any more questions. Do not pry into it. Do not speculate what I'm talking about. Simply do not identify yourself as a Trump supporter in any restaurant you ever plan to eat in again. Bad idea. Trust me. All right. The CEO of NVIDIA says that robots will be as common as cars, and there will be big breakthroughs in the next 2 to 3 years. What do you think? Will robots be as common as cars? I think so. And I think robots will be driving cars. You can have robots driving cars. And that's going to be just 2, 3 years. I do plan to be an early adopter. So I do want to get myself a robot. But I don't know if I want a robot that's taller than me. I'm not sure I can handle that. Right? It's bad enough that there are humans who are taller than me. But I'm not going to buy something that's taller than me. I have the same thing with dogs. The reason I wouldn't have a pit bull in my house is I don't want to have any creature in my house that can take me in a fair fight. That's one of my rules for survival. Never let anybody live in your house who can beat you in a fair fight. Now, so far, I've never had that experience. I've never lived in a house where anybody else could beat me in a fair fight. But have I? Well, maybe maybe my college roommate could have beat me up. That was about it. All right. So let's talk about there's some fentanyl news. So Governor Newsom, every time Governor Newsom introduces any new program, it just makes me laugh because I know it's not real. Like, I don't think anything he does is real. It's entirely for the cameras. So here's his new thing. He's going to massively tighten border security in California to, try to crack down on all that fentanyl. That isn't real. People. First of all, he's not going to crack down on anything. Second of all, if you crack down on every bit of fentanyl that comes across the legal border crossings, it wouldn't make any difference. Fentanyl is so small and portable that you could walk up to the fence and literally just throw it over the fence, a little package of it, and somebody on the other side of the fence catches it and says, "Thanks, I just got $10 million worth of fentanyl. I'm going to sell it." So there is no real way, unless the border is completely closed and nobody in Mexico owns a boat, there really isn't any way that you can keep it out of the country. The only way you can do it is execute them in place. And I wonder if we could do that. It's weird that our military, of course, has to follow the rules of military engagement. But you know what? We have an entity in the United States that can kill people without any legal process. It's the CIA. They're actually authorized to kill people if it's good for the country. So I'd love to see the CIA doing summary executions at the border. If you have to drag them to the other side of the border to shoot them, that's okay. But if you find a giant bag of fentanyl in somebody's car, you should be able to put a bullet in their head and just drag them to the side of the road and say, next. Now, I'm only kidding a little bit. We're losing, what, 50 to 70,000 people a year to overdoses. And I'm pretty sure that the CIA is complicit in that trade, meaning that we must be working with the cartels because nothing else would make sense that we're observing. There's no other hypothesis that explains the fact that we let the cartels operate when we know where their bases are. Now, if you're going to say, but Scott, we would never militarily intervene in a sovereign country like Mexico, are you kidding? Intervening in other people's country is what we do. That's like the main thing we do. Do you know why Mexico isn't bigger? Because we took half of their fucking country. No, we will intervene anywhere we want to if we can get away with it. So the fact that the cartels have never been attacked at their bases, I think, is proof that we're working with them, meaning that our spies need them, as Mike Benz explains, to control the other governments in the south of our border. So I think it's exactly what it looks like. Let's talk about the Fine People hoax. I love that a few Democrats recently just found out that was a hoax. So Bill Ackman, famously a Democrat who is waking up to what his team was doing, admits that he only just found out, just this year, that the Fine People hoax was a hoax. At the same time, other prominent venture capitalist, Sean McGuire, I give him a compliment. He was brave enough to tweet that he just found out, I think this week, that the Fine People hoax was a hoax, and that you could tell just by watching the video. Now that's the shocker, is that it wasn't even some clever plan. It was right there on the video. And when he had that revelation, a lot of us said, well, thanks for catching up from 6 years ago. But imagine believing that the president said that and that 70 million people voted for him anyway. Just imagine what it would be like to be a Democrat who believes the news is still trying to be real. Now, I say trying because everybody understands that the news gets stories wrong. Nobody criticizes them for being wrong now and then because, fog of war and there are corrections and everybody understands nothing's perfect. The difference is trying. It's very clear, super, super clear, that at least the political-oriented news is not trying to be the news. It's trying to get a person elected. Certainly on the left, and you could argue it on the right as well. So, but imagine you're a Democrat, and you actually believe that the president called the Nazis fine people, and that after that, 70 million people still voted for him. How would you like to live in that country? I would be packing my bags and moving so fast if I thought that 70 million people were sort of pro-Nazi. That's what the Democrats have taught their base. I mean, obviously, it's the opposite. Cori Bush, prominent Democrat, was on PBS, and she says she once healed a homeless woman's tumors by putting her hands on her. That's an elected Democrat, an official who's helping to run the country. But it raised immediate questions to me. If you can heal a woman's tumors, and apparently it was instant, it wasn't even, a week later she was better, right away. Those tumors just shrunk as soon as she put her hands on that homeless woman. Now, what is the most unbelievable part of this? That she put her hands on a homeless woman with tumors? Yes, because that didn't happen. And I can also assure you that she didn't suddenly get better. Nope. Now, I would like to contrast my treatment of this story with how the Democrats treated the Finding People hoax. Compare and contrast these two stories. Number one, a president of the United States thought it would be a good idea to do an address to the country and praise neo-Nazis in America in 2018 or wherever it happened. And 81 million Democrats said, well, that sounds like something that really happened in the real world. Now contrast that to all of us listening to Cori Bush say she healed a homeless woman's tumors instantly by putting her hands on her. Do you say to yourself, wow, that could be true? No, you don't. No, you don't. You say, that is obviously bullshit from top to bottom, left to right, in and out. Every single part of that is bullshit. End of story. Now, is there nobody who's a Democrat who can do what I just did? To look at a story that, by its nature, I'm not going to research this. I don't need to look into it further. I don't need to do my own research. No, she made a batshit crazy, obviously false claim. End of story. Why can I do this so easily? And 81 Democrats are like, oh, the president said drink bleach? Sounds reasonable to me. No, he never said to drink bleach or disinfectants. All right, so that was funny. Meanwhile, Mark Cuban continues to be an enigma. He posted a post that says, by the way he wrote it, that he believes in the Fine People hoax, the drinking bleach hoax, and the January 6th insurrection hoax. His entire public persona is oriented around the most obvious hoaxes in American history. Does he also believe that Cori Bush healed people's tumors because it was on PBS? Because PBS, showed the interview. Does he really believe all those hoaxes? How do you explain that? Do you think he really, really believes those? He also posted yesterday, I won't vote for anyone who doesn't believe climate change is real. Okay, now I have to ask again, is this performance art? Because it doesn't really even look like a real opinion that an actual human could have. Like there's something else going on here that I'm not quite sure about. Because there's no way his IQ is so low that explains what we're seeing. Like there's no way that he could, navigate his many professional successes and have an IQ of 80, which is what you would need to have these opinions. So what is it? Is it cognitive dissonance because he started on a side and then got too committed, and then when he found out his side was the baddies, he couldn't change? Maybe a little. Maybe it's part of the answer. I mean, it would explain things, but it's kind of a stretch. Is it a news silo problem? Well, I think there's a good chance it is. Because remember, Bill Ackman and Sean McGuire, the other venture capitalists, we can agree that they're brilliant people. They're brilliant. All right, Sean's got a PhD in something I can't even pronounce, and Ackman's been, a finance genius forever. So both of those people were unaware that the Fine People hoax was a hoax until this year. How do you explain that? It's the news silo. Now, if there's one thing I can tell you that you need to understand, intelligence does not protect you from brainwashing. You think it should, right? You really think it should, but it doesn't. There's just no correlation in the short run. If you are somebody who's learned specifically the tools of knowing when you're being brainwashed, then you've got a chance. So if you have intelligence plus a talent stack that would help you navigate propaganda versus reality, you might be in good shape. But what is the key fact you would have to know in order to escape your delusions if you're a Democrat? What's the one thing you'd have to know for sure that they don't seem to know? Just one thing. They still believe that the news is trying to tell you the truth. That's it. They have one false belief, which is easily debunked if you want to spend 2 minutes doing it. But they don't seem to understand that the history of the United States is that the news has never been real. It's just that some have figured it out and some haven't. You probably couldn't run a country with real news, because the news would tell you, oh, these leaders are doing a bad job, everything's falling apart, and then everything would fall apart. So you need some amount of brainwashing to keep the country together. It's like, you're the best country in the world. We are? You should give up your life for freedom. That sounds like a good idea. Sign me up. So really, brainwashing your local population isn't optional. Every successful nation did it. Don't you think the Romans were told that they were special? That's why they could have slaves. Well, we're Romans. We're gods. Of course we could have slaves. Why wouldn't we? We're Romans, right? So every successful civilization, and many of them are evil, but to succeed, you do have to brainwash your people. The difference is some of us figure out the game and can escape from the clutches of the propaganda. Some of us get halfway out and think we're all the way out. And that's full Dunning-Kruger territory, where you think you've got the answers, but you're actually still dumb. And I think a lot of people say, wait, hold on. I'm looking at the news. Oh, I got it now. I got it. Fox News and Breitbart are all telling lies, and CNN and MSNBC are checking those lies and giving us the true thing. I got it. I figured out the world now. I figured out that one side tells lies and the other side tells the truth. Got it. That's the whole problem. That the brainwashing, they only got half of it out of their system. The part they didn't agree with in the first place, the stuff coming from the right. But every time we think that this is some kind of a moral, intellectual, philosophical problem, it's not. There's one problem. Half of the country believes that the news is still trying to be true. It's not. It's really not. Now, part of the reason that the illusion can be presented is that a lot of the news has no impact. In other words, if there's a hurricane, the news can tell you there's a hurricane and there's no spin whatsoever. Yes, hurricane. We're trying to get right the number of people who are hurt. Oh, we got the wrong number, but we easily corrected. Now we have the right number. That stuff's all probably pretty true. It's only when they talk about politics or sometimes the economy or the system itself and a little bit about lawfare that it's completely made up. And if you don't know that the weather is still, they're trying to get it right, they just get it wrong sometimes. And when they're talking about, I don't know, some little thing that happened somewhere that's not of any consequence, they probably try to get that right. Probably. It's just the political stuff. Nope. And the scientific stuff, I'm not so sure about either. Well, here's some good news. There's a number of companies trying to make nuclear cheaper and smaller and mass-produced. One of them is Radiant Nuclear in Southern California. And they are building a, looks like about maybe the size of a trailer on a tractor trailer situation. And looks like they're optimistic that they can figure out how to make a mass-producible nuclear device that you could put on a trailer and just pull it up to your town. Imagine that. So that's pretty good. But you know why we don't have a good nuclear program? It's because Democrats are afraid of it because they were brainwashed. So Democrats were brainwashed, and that's why we can't have nice things. Because if we were doing what China is doing and growing nuclear fast and making sure that you were doing it right, I'm sure their engineers are good, we'd be in much better shape. but one part of the country was brainwashed into thinking that the safest, best hope for mankind was the most dangerous one, because green something, blah, blah. General Flynn has some medical diagnosis of Biden, and he's funny because he introduced it this way. He goes, "I'm not a doctor." I don't know exactly what he was meaning by that, but he says regarding Biden, he says, having spoken to some doctors who want to remain anonymous, Joe has what's called Lewy body dementia. Now, most of you know that, don't you? Do you know why most of you know that that Biden has Lewy body dementia? Because you're not Democrats. That's why you know that. Their silo doesn't report that. It's obvious. Pretty much anybody working in this business knows it. They can see it. There's no doubt about it. Really. I mean, not really. There's not really any doubt. But he says, he goes on, he says, protein deposits called Lewy bodies develop in nerve cells in the brain. The protein deposits affect brain regions involved in thinking, memory, and movement. This condition is also known as dementia with Lewy bodies. Houston, we have a problem, says General Flynn. Well, it could affect your brain regions, including thinking, memory, and movement. Now, the movement part, not the biggest problem in the world. Memory, well, that could be a problem, but if you're the president, you have plenty of people to act as your auxiliary memories. But you know that thinking problem is a bit of a risk. Now, imagine you live in a world in which people are still thinking he's the best choice. Those are also the people who lived in a world where they think 70 million people were okay with somebody who liked Nazis, which, of course, didn't happen in the real world. All right. Imagine how scary it would have been to be a Democrat. So not only did you think the neo-Nazis were supported by half the country, but you also thought that climate models were real and could predict that we're all going to burn up. Imagine thinking that was real and waking up every day saying, well, we're doomed, according to AOC, we're all going to die. So I don't know if the white supremacists in the military that don't actually exist are going to kill me, the climate models that aren't real are going to fry me, or the neo-Nazis that are not actually supported by anybody except the people who were marching that day and a few others, and believing that the president once suggested drinking bleach, and that nuclear is dangerous, and that Biden is just fine behind closed doors. Okay, this is massive brainwashing problem. And the longer the Republicans act like it's a policy difference, the more lost we are. We don't have a policy difference. That's the symptom. That's the symptom. The problem is brainwashing, right? You can't fix the symptoms. You got to fix the brainwashing. And number one is people have to know the news isn't trying to tell you the news. They're not trying and sometimes failing. They're not trying. It's not their mission to tell you what's true, and never has been. Speaking of that, the Biden spokesperson, whose name is Corinne Jean-Pierre, she says that the videos of Biden looking like he's a statue and he's confused and wandering off are what she calls cheap fakes. They're not deep fakes because they're not made by, AI, but they're cheap fakes. You know what a cheap fake would be? For example, a cheap fake would be the Fine People hoax, where they didn't spend any money. They just cut off the last part of the video. That's a cheap fake. But now she says, suddenly she understands what a cheap fake is after years of not knowing what they were. And she says the video of Biden trying to wander off in Normandy was fake, because if you saw what he was looking at the parachutist who was just done a good stunt. So he was interacting with the parachutist. He was not wandering away, which is the same thing I told you. Do you know why I told you that he was not wandering away? Because I'm not brainwashed by anybody on the right. So I looked at the video and I said, I see what they're saying about him looking lost, but it looks more to me like he's interacting with somebody who's off camera, which was exactly what it was. You don't really see this on the left, do you? When this story came out, the Normandy one, I saw a number of Trump supporters, not all, most of them were just having fun with it, but a number of people said, well, it's not exactly, the video is not exactly accurate because there's somebody off screen. But you never heard even one Democrat saying, well, okay, the Fine People hoax wasn't real. Have you? Have you ever heard even one? I've never heard it. But at least the Trump supporters were willing to say, okay, we're stretching on this one a little bit. But then I think, to be fair, there's a recreational belief. I think that when the Democrats say Trump suggested drinking bleach, they're sort of aware it didn't happen. But it's so much fun to say it because it bothers Republicans so much that it's a recreational belief, not one they actually believe. They're just having fun pretending they believe it. And I think that was the same thing with the conservatives. They were having fun believing that Biden wandered off in Normandy because it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change a thing. Biden is obviously checked out and his brain is not there, except according to Mark Cuban, who says in person, he's great. Yeah. In person, he's still sharp as a tack, according to Cuban. Anyway, but we know, and then there's one where Biden is babbling at a meeting. Did you see the latest one? Where a bunch of people are trying to talk to Biden at the same time, and he's sitting in a chair just smiling at the crowd. And then he imitates the crowd. And he goes, blah, 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 blah. Now, taken out of context, it looks like he went crazy and just started going, blah, 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 blah. In context, he was mocking the crowd in a joking way. Was that an indication of his mental state? Well, not exactly. But you can see for yourself that there's something going on, Louis dementia, obviously. So while it is true that Corinne Jean-Pierre is accurate in saying that some of these are, quote, cheap fakes, it still does show the truth at the same time as the fun that people are having with them. And she also tried to explain the Obama taking Biden's hand to lead him off the stage recently. She said that they're like family and that Obama taking Biden by the hand is more like a family thing. All right. Okay, sure. Now, it was a very familiar thing. It was a familiar thing, but I think the G7 were all doing the same thing with him. The G7 were all guiding around by his arm, so they're not family. All right, there's a funny story that one of the Secret Service agents for Biden was robbed at gunpoint during the fundraiser in LA. And I have to ask myself, do the robbers ever get together at night and brag about their scores? So somebody actually successfully robbed an armed and highly trained Secret Service agent for the president and got away with it. He got away with it. And I can just imagine him sitting around at the robber hideout that night. So, Bob, what did you do today? Oh, well, I nailed it today. I knocked over this jewelry store. It's the third time I've hit the same jewelry store. They keep moving the security cameras, and I keep finding the blind spots. Got a big bag of jewels. Really? Really, that's what you did? You just robbed a jewelry store for the third time. Wow. That is super gay. I robbed the president's Secret Service agent. So, who's the best robber here? You got some jewelry. Yeah, that's very nice of you. I took out one of the toughest security guards. Well, it just seems like you'd have something to brag about, is what I'm saying. All right, the Boeing CEO, he might already be doing it right now, but he's David Calhoun. He's going to be grilled by Congress over the alleged imperfections in the aircraft. We hear at the same time that there's a brand new whistleblower who just came out that even the CEO has not heard from yet, unless it happened since I started this. And here's one of the things he said. He said, quote, "Our culture is far from perfect, but we are taking action and making progress," he's expected to say. Here's a question that I'm waiting for some Republican to ask. Tell us about your DEI policies. How many white men have you hired in the last year? Now, here's the thing. I don't think the Republicans can do it because they're not canceled like I am. So even though the real question has nothing to do with anybody's genes or their demographic or their culture, it has only to do with a system which is prioritizing a certain class of people that there are not enough of for all the people who would like to hire them and improve their diversity. Now, there's not enough highly qualified people in that category. It has nothing to do with their genes or their culture, just not enough. So managers, instead of saying, well, I can't find any, which would get them fired, they say, oh, I found a bunch of them. Yeah, I just looked extra hard. I don't know what's wrong with the other companies. If they did what I did and just do more outreach, they could have plenty of diversity and everything would be great. But that's not real. What they did was lower their standards because there is no other way for everybody to get diversity when there's a limited pool and the demand is 10 times the size of the pool. You know, if the demand were 20% larger than the supply, I don't think I'd even bring it up. But if it's 10 times larger, there's only one way it goes. People are going to lie like crazy that they hired qualified people while they hire unqualified people. The incentive system will guarantee that. Follow the money. It's 100% guarantee. There's no other way that can go. And to pretend it might go the other way, that's the Mark Cuban argument. That's where we have to wonder if it's performance art. And I haven't ruled that out, by the way. He might be doing a bit, Mark Cuban, in supporting DEI when clearly he knows the numbers can't work. He lives in the real world. Anyway, so the question will not be asked, has DEI destroyed your company? But it's the only one I care about. Because do you think that they would be there if they didn't have some real structural systemic problem? I don't think so. And the only new structural systemic problem I'm aware of is DEI. If something else changed, it would be good to find out so we don't keep blaming people. All right, we found out a little bit more about Hunter and Ukraine and Burisma. This is from the news site Just the News. And apparently, we have new information that the FBI knew back in 2016. Now, that's when they knew about it, but it happened earlier than 2016 when Hunter's dad was the vice president. That Hunter had plotted to set up a new venture in Liechtenstein that would be funded by $120 million from the owner of that Ukrainian energy firm, Burisma. And so that, I guess that didn't go through. But just hold this in your mind. So now we have documentation that while Joe Biden was vice president, his son was working with Burisma and would have taken a quarter of the profits from the new venture they were setting up. So pretty good deal. And we know that Hunter's association with it was requested because they needed political cover. Yeah, John Solomon, Just the News. Now that's really bad. Hey, Chuck Tully, you're doing a lot of thumbs up there. I'm wondering if your keyboard is stuck again, because every time you come on, you just do thumbs up 100 times. So you might be unaware that something's happening on your end. So if you could fix that, that'd be great. All right. So I guess everything in Ukraine was exactly as corrupt as it looked like. So the Democrats are still trying to make hay out of the fact that Trump once confused the name Jackson with the name Johnson for his prior doctor. Now, I would call that no sign of anything wrong with anybody, but because they'd have to defend dementia-riddled Biden, they're pretending that the real person with a mental problem is Trump. Now, what is the name for that? When you blame the other person for having what you clearly have. It's called projection, right? Projection. And we see it everywhere. Every policy is, no, Biden didn't open the border, that was Trump. No, Biden didn't cause any inflation, that was Trump. So they have a very consistent, well-identified, we all observe it, of simply saying that I'm not doing that, that's what you're doing. Now, what's that also called? It's also gaslighting. When you tell somebody that the thing they're looking right at isn't really there. That's different from lying. Lying is when you tell a lie that you hope you'll get away with because nobody can tell the truth, or it's hard to know the truth. But when you're looking right at a rock and somebody says, there's no rock there, that's called gaslighting, because that's way worse than lying. Because if people believe what you're saying, and yet their own eyes see the rock and they can touch it and feel it, they actually go insane because they've lost the connection between what's real and what they observe. So gaslighting is a super toxic thing to do. So we got the projection, we've got the gaslighting, and the Fine People hoax would be the perfect example of gaslighting. The video wasn't even altered. They just clipped off a bit and then told you that you couldn't. And then when you read the whole thing, or you saw the video and you saw the whole video, they told you that you didn't see it. That happened to me a bunch of times when I was arguing that it was a hoax. I'd show people the actual transcript, and then they would act like it didn't happen. And I think, well, you're looking right at it. Here's the video. You can listen to yourself. And they'll just act like it's not happening in some weird gaslighting way that doesn't even make sense. Nobody ever says, well, gosh, I guess I was wrong about that. Except Sean McGuire and Bill Ackman now. So you're seeing the smartest people are the first ones to figure out what's going on. Wait a minute. Have they been lying to me the entire time? Yes. About everything. About everything. As soon as you think they lied to me about this one thing, you're just as lost as before you found out. Doesn't help you a bit, except that one little thing. You have to understand it's everything. It's both sides, and it's everything. It's fake. So what would you call the signs of narcissism? Well, here's some top signals for narcissism. Gaslighting, projection. How about lack of empathy? You're watching the Democrats lock up January 6 protesters who did not do anything dangerous. They were just there. That is a lack of empathy. Because I can tell you for sure that if Democrats were locking up protesters for doing a little trespassing when they had a real reason to at least think there was a problem, do you think I'd be okay with that? Do you think I'd be okay locking up just ordinary citizen protesters just because they were Democrats? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because I have empathy. I look at the size of their offense, and I look at the size of the penalty, and I go, those are not even close. So empathy is apparently lacking on the left. And what about cheating? Cheating is another thing that narcissists are famous for. They'll say they're loyal to you, but they're really cheating. Does that sound like Hunter Biden? Sounds like he's loyal to us, but really he's double dealing. Does it sound like Gold Bar Bob? Said he was our senator, but really he was taking money from various interests. And Brad Wilcox was posting on X some new data that says there's a huge difference in infidelity now between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans are about the same, don't like infidelity at all, don't like to practice it. And Democrats have had a major change that only half of them are in favor of fidelity. Half of Democrats think that cheating on your spouse is, it's okay. Half of them. Now, what does that sound like? Put it all together. These are literally the classic symptoms of narcissism. Here's another little tip. Do you know where narcissism is concentrated in the public? It's in the young. Young people, by far, have the symptoms of narcissism compared to older voters. Older voters tend to be Republican. Younger voters tend to be Democrats. It is a scientific fact that demographic has a lot of narcissism in it. When you look at almost anything that's bugging the hell out of you, it all looks like narcissism. Let's say you're a doctor who wants to turn a little girl into a little boy because the little girl and or boy says, hey, I got some issues. If you think you can change somebody's gender, or let's say sex, if you think you can change their sex, you're kind of playing God, aren't you? That's very much a narcissistic thing. It doesn't even sound like a doctor to me. It sounds like, what's wrong with you? Why do you think you can even do that? Right. Now, by the way, I have lots of empathy for the trans community, but like most of you, once somebody's an adult, I say, let them live. Let them live their best life. If that's what they need, I'm not going to second guess somebody's personal decisions about healthcare, lifestyle, or anything else, as long as it doesn't bother me. Children, of course, we have to put an entirely different standard on them, obviously. Now, what would the Democrats say if I were to say, you have all the signs of narcissism? What would they say? They would gaslight you, and they would project, and they would say, no, you're the one, and your candidate, Trump, is the biggest narcissist in the world. Now, I'm going to agree with that. But how many of them know there are two kinds of narcissists? There's one kind you like and one kind you need to get away from. Trump is a grandiose narcissist. He's a person who wants you to know that he's going to make everything better. And then he's going to work really hard to make it happen, because wouldn't it feel good if he said, I'm going to make your life better? And then he did. And then you praised him, and then you gave him awards, and then you said he was a great president. We see it right in front of us. How would you know somebody was specifically the good kind of narcissist, a grandiose one? It's the easiest thing in the world. How do you know Trump is a grandiose narcissist, the good kind, who wants credit for doing good things? It's his slogan, Make America Great Again. There it is. He's trying to get credit by making America great again. That's what a grandiose narcissist does. Does he want to be known as the best president? Yes. Yes. Why? Because he's a grandiose narcissist. Do I want to be known as the best podcaster? Yes. Yes. I mean, I don't think I'm going to get there, but I love it because I'm a grandiose narcissist. I love doing things that anybody in the public says, that really helped me. When I help people stop drinking or lose weight, which I do quite often, I feel great when people say, you helped me lose 25 pounds. I feel great. I'm a grandiose narcissist. Do you want less of me? I mean, that's the most grandiose narcissist thing anybody ever said. But do you really want less of me? See, what about Elon Musk? Elon Musk thought he could put a turtle on Mars. What's that? That's a grandiose narcissist. He thought he could make an electric car economically. Who does that? Grandiose narcissist. Have you noticed that all of his businesses are very oriented toward the benefit of humankind? Grandiose narcissist. You don't want fewer of those. You want as many as you can get. He works all day long so that when he's done, the world is better off, objectively. Nobody's questioning it. And then people say, well, my God, I'm glad you did that. You're the best. Of course he wants that. We all want that, right? But we're not all grandiose narcissists like me. So I think narcissism explains a whole lot of what's going on, that and the silos, the information silos. So Biden signed some kind of amnesty for people who are non-citizens who are married. So I guess the category would be there's 500,000 people who are in the category of illegal immigrant spouses who have lived in and worked in the USA for over a decade. Now, I'm going to say something that sounds like a contradiction. And you're going to say, but that's different from what you said before. So let me explain. It'll take a little bit of explaining. When Trump ran in 2016 and said, I'm going to deport every single illegal person, 25 million of them, people panicked and said, that will disrupt the country. I can't believe you do that. Most of them have been living here as citizens for years. The reason I was okay with it is I didn't for a minute think he was really going to do it. If I had ever thought he was really going to deport 25 million people, I think I would have been opposed to that. Now, I do want closed borders and tight security. But people who have already gotten in and created a life and are paying taxes and didn't break a law, yeah, I'm pretty soft on that. I'm pretty soft on that. Like that's my Democrat liberal side. Yes, if you can do something for the country, you're adding. You spend 10 years being a good citizen, I'm going to be pretty soft on that. Now we have, another 25 million or so that came in under Biden, or some gigantic number. And Trump is again saying, I'm going to send everybody back. I'm just going to deport everybody illegal. Today, I'm in favor of it. I'm publicly in favor of it, shipping back everybody. You know why? Because we're not going to start with the people who have a job and have been here for 10 years. We're not going to start with them. And by the time we get down to them, we'll be done. We won't have the will to get rid of people who have a job and have been here 10 years and live like citizens. But you can't get there with kindness. Kindness gets you another 35 million illegal immigrants and we get overwhelmed. Being tough and saying, you know what? I'm going to ship back everybody who came in the last 3 years. Everybody. I don't even care anything about you. You're just going back. If you came back under Biden, you're just going back. You have to do that. And that is empathy, right? Don't confuse it with being mean. That's empathy, because you have to have empathy for the citizens who live here, but you also have to create a situation where the people who might want to come here know what's real and what's not real. What's real is we have too many. And now we don't look at you the same, and it's a different situation. So yes, I was completely in favor of Trump saying he was going to deport 25 million when I knew he wasn't going to do it. It was just a good way to keep people home, right? The threat should have kept people home, and I think it did. So you need the threat, but now we actually need the real thing. I think that if we don't ship at least 10 million people home, we just are asking for trouble later. Yeah, I think 10 million is sort of an opening bid. You could probably get to 25. It would be super disruptive. And I saw Democrats say, do you understand how much violence this will cause and how much upheaval? To which I said, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm just comparing it to the alternative. The alternative is certain death. The country will be destroyed by immigration at some level. We're not there yet, but we're heading toward it as fast as we can. So if Trump stops it and makes it look like it's forever a bad idea from this point forward, good. And if he has to send back 10 million people to make the point like we're not joking, I do feel sorry for the ones who just wanted a better life. I do have empathy, but it's a tough world. Sometimes you got to make tough decisions, and you got to start with empathy for your own country. That's the only thing sensible. Everybody should do that. The other countries should look out for their citizens first as well. Anyway, Biden wants to raise taxes on rich. You know how you can change people's minds on that? Here's a conversation I've had with people who were in the lower tax range. I would say, do you know how much taxes I pay? And people who don't pay as much taxes as I do don't really have a good guess. And I say, it's a little over half of everything I make. You should see their eyes. If you tell somebody who's paying, a total of, let's say, 26% taxes, they feel that they're being just absolutely abused paying their 25%. They're seeing it taken out of their paycheck, and it's just like, it's monstrous. And I say, you do realize that if you maybe doubled your income, which you'd like to do, you'd all like to double your income, that they'll take half, more than half. And people actually can't process that. It's actually such a big number because that you're basically working for the government, not yourself, if they're taking more than half. And I find that just simply telling people that number completely wakes them up, because we still live in a country where people think they might become the rich one someday, even if they're just inheriting money, right? They all think they have a chance. Maybe I'll someday be you. And I say, yeah, you could be me. They'll take half of your money forever. It's way more than that, actually, because they also get a bite of my estate. So if you take the amount that I spend on other people, let's say family members or charity or what else, the amount I spend on income tax, the amount I spend on property tax, the amount I spend on sales tax, and then you figure out my likely, estate tax, probably if you count the money I give to other people, probably an 80% tax already. I would expect that 20% of all the money I ever made would stay with whatever's my estate or my heirs. Now, people have no idea how bad it already is. And if you tell them, sometimes it straightens them up right away. All right. So according to The Hill, the Biden campaign, who are full of idiots, as we know, are leaning into this felony idea. And they believe that they can make Trump lose support by hammering on he's a felon. Now, of course, everybody who's paying attention knows they used lawfare to turn him into a felon. So anybody who understood that the news is not real would know it's the worst idea in the world. But the low information voters didn't really follow this. I think the low information voters are relying on two things. One is grab him by the pussy, which you'll hear women say, that's the reason I can't support him. Now they'll throw in, the alleged other rape charges and storming and stuff. To me, that's a fake because. It's a fake because. It's they wanted to vote for Biden, but they didn't understand politics. That's most people. Most people have a strong choice, but they don't really understand the issues. How many people could really give you a good description of why we're in Ukraine? 5%? 2% of the country? No more than that. So people need to say they have an opinion. They need to act like they're citizens. They need to act like they have reasons. So they have fake reasons to cover up the fact that they don't understand the topic. Oh, I could never vote for him because he said that thing about the women. Do you think that would stop them for a second if it were somebody they liked? No one. It wouldn't stop them for 1 second. Do you think RFK Jr. has any skeletons in his sex life closet? Well, apparently he was pretty let's say, pretty experienced. Do you think anybody would not vote for RFK Jr. just because of his past personal life? I doubt it. I don't even hear people complain that he was once a drug addict. I guess that always makes you a drug addict. If you look at the things that the Democrats will forgive if it's on their team, you can very clearly see that these are not real reasons. These are fake becauses. So the two biggest fake ones are I don't like what he says about women, that they would never apply to somebody on their team, and that he's convicted of a felony, which, if the situation were reversed, would never apply to their own team. They'd say, well, you lawfared our candidate. That's on you, not on him, right? So to know for sure that they would not apply the standard to their own person tells you it's not a real standard. It's not a real reason, right? If somebody said, but on the other hand, if somebody says abortion is my thing, don't they know that Trump's already done with that? He already appointed people. They already kicked it to the states, and you should be talking to your state. And by the way, Trump needs to do a much better job explaining that he's not the person you should talk to about abortion. He should say, I have a view, and now I did what I said I would do, which was I changed the system so that each state can have a policy that's closer to the body of the people who live there. What part of being a dictator matches me giving you more power and me less? Which part of that makes sense as a dictator? Where I said, how about you states figure it out and I get out of it completely? That's the way you should say it. Say, I'm out. I have a strong opinion personally, but I kick to the states because that's where I think the decisions need to be made. That is the least scary thing you'll ever hear from somebody you think is going to be a dictator. So no, the felony thing is fake, and the I don't like his character thing are just fake reasons for people who don't understand politics and don't want to. And I thought of a funny analogy for that. It's like the pirates it's like the Democrats are saying they don't want to watch the Pirates of Caribbean because Johnny Depp plays a pirate. That's not a real reason. Everybody likes Johnny Depp. You know why? He plays a really cool pirate. Do you know who else plays a really cool pirate? Trump. He's kind of a cool pirate. And you can see it when he goes to the UFC. Do you think the UFC is cheering so loudly because he's obeyed all the rules in his life? Nope. It's because he's a cool pirate. That's the part they like. Cool pirate. Once you understand the cool pirate part, then as you see more people come to his support, it'll make sense. All right. Greg Gutfeld was commenting on the Five that Biden needs celebrities for his events just to get people to show up. So he did the George Clooney and Obama and who was the Pretty Woman? The person who was the actress in Pretty Woman, Julia. I forget her name. She hasn't done many movies lately. I can't remember her name. Julia, what's her last name? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So he has his celebrities up there. And also Greg was talking about how it's men who are fleeing the Democrats. And because men don't like to be treated as victims. I never thought of that exactly, but I think that's true. Men are largely don't like to be treated as victims because it's a way of saying you're weak. We like to complain, but we don't want to be seen as victims. There's a difference. Complaining is just calling out what's wrong. But being a victim is just not a cool way to feel. It's not a good brand. So you can see why people are fleeing the victim party to be in the party that says, if you do everything right, you got a real good shot. But I'll also point out that the Democrats have entirely imaginary talking points, which is bolstered by people who are literally experts in fiction. So you got your Stephen King, expert in fiction. You got your Rob Reiner, expert in fiction. You got your Clooney's and your Julie, whoever she is, name I can't remember, fiction. So all the fiction people seem to be pro-Democrat, and I wonder why. It's almost like the things that Democrats are talking about are fiction themselves. Well, let's look at some of the things that are their strongest complaints about Trump. Let's see. There's he's only out for himself, so that's an imaginary thing. He's stealing my democracy. Okay, that's imaginary. There might be another election. Might never be another election because, he'll become a dictator. Well, that's imaginary. He will rip up the Constitution. Clearly not imaginary. He wants to be dictator for a day. Obviously, it's just based on a joke. And the all-time classic is, we lawfared him into a felony conviction, so don't vote for a felon. Those are actually the real arguments. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey from, thinking that the Republicans were the crazy party to thinking that they were the smart party. When I was a younger man, I would look at the Republican Party and I'd say, I feel like you're making all your decisions based on religion, and I don't share that belief. So to me, a lot of the basis for Republican opinion seemed to me imaginary, because it was based on a religion I didn't have. Now, I like the system. I do like that it's a Christian-informed Constitution, because lots of good stuff there, right? Some of the best stuff made it into the Constitution. Good work. And I like living around Christians, because they tend to be law-abiding, decent, empathetic people. So I love being in a Christian country. I just don't have the belief. So to me, it was like living in this weird imaginary world where the people in charge, the Republicans, had views that just seemed informed by imagination as opposed to reality. Then Trump came along. Trump also professes belief, and the Republicans are just as much believers as always. But they don't lead with it. They don't lead with it. The Trump effect is to make people pragmatic. Is this going to make me money? Will this make me less safe or more safe? And not much more. Not much more. Because if you do those things, guess what? Oh, I sound like Biden there. I won't say guess what. If you do those things, you get your economics and your defense right, you are now in a luxury situation where you can practice your belief and nobody can come get you. Perfect. The perfect situation for me is to be in the party full of Christians who are operating pragmatically. Okay, this works. This is how to raise a kid. We want more school choice. You could argue that those are sort of Christianity influenced or informed in many cases, but they often get you to just practical stuff, right? Just practical stuff. So I think the Republicans have become the practical party who also have a very lovely, in my opinion, belief system that supports their pragmatism. Now, where it gets into the gray area is abortion, but I don't weigh into that topic because I think women need to figure that out and let us know. So I'm very comfortable in, let's say, promoting the Republican way of life, even if it's influenced by something that I'm not a believer of, because it just works. It just works so well. But at the moment, it seems the Democrats have become completely under the realm of imagination. So they're imagining the climate models are real. They imagine that the news is telling them the truth. They imagine that the 91 counts are based on reality instead of lawfare. They imagine that Biden is good behind closed doors. They imagine that Trump's going to steal your democracy. You see the pattern, right? There is only one party that's actually even dealing in the real world. One party has completely departed any pragmatic consideration. Look at DEI. Do you know why Republicans oppose it and Democrats favor it? If you're living, 20 years ago, you say it's because the Republicans are a bunch of whiteys who are all a bunch of racists. And you'd say the Democrats are the ones who care about people and diversity, so they're working on it. No, nothing like that's happening. The Republicans are saying, wait a minute, that's a system that can't work because merit works. Anything that's opposite of merit will fail. It's a system problem. Now, does it work out that it would be better for white people at the moment if merit were the only consideration? Yes, because there's so much systemic racism at the school level that the pipeline doesn't have as much diversity as everybody wants. But first, you got to take care of business. And the first part of business is keep your fucking airplanes in the air. Don't talk to me about anything else until you can keep your airplanes in the air. And we're not doing that. we're not at a point where we can keep our airplanes in the air. And I'm just gonna say it's probably DEI problem. Again, not because of anybody's genes, not because of anybody's culture. It's just a system imbalance between supply and demand. Nothing else. That's all it takes. Every Republican understands that. But Democrats don't. And I don't know why. Because they live in an imaginary world, I guess. Well, Trump is going after the governor of Illinois, Pritzker. And I'm going to end on this. I just love that Trump has been Trump so long that now you just enjoy the show. And the things that used to be mean tweets and no president can do that, and it's the end of the world if a president talks. We've all come to accept that when Trump is his most Trumpy, it's a good show. And that's all. Here's somebody whistling. That's weird. So here's Trump being Trump, saying the things that nobody should say in public. If I could ever advise you, never say any of these things in public. You're going to sound like a giant dick. But if you've developed Trump's brand, bring it on, because it's all just entertaining at this point. All right, here's Trump in a statement about Governor Pritzker. Quote, sloppy J.B. Pritzker, the rotund governor from the once great state of Illinois, who makes Chris Christie look like a male model and whose family wanted him out of the business because he was so pathetic at helping them run it, has presided over the destruction and disintegration of Illinois at levels never seen before in any state. Crime is rampant and people are sadly fleeing Illinois. Unless a change is made at the governor's level, Illinois can never be great again. Now, here's why you should never say anything like that in public. 2/3 of America is overweight. Do you know what happens to me if I do a comic strip and somebody's overweight and that has anything to do with the story? I get hammered by people who say, your readers, 2/3 of them, you're kind of making fun of them. To which I said, oh, that's a really good point. I do make a comic for you to be entertained. I don't make a comic to insult you. So I stopped doing it. So I don't do overweight jokes unless there's some weird element to it that takes it into a different direction. So there could be an exception. But as a general rule, I don't think it's cool. And I also don't believe in free will. So I don't believe that people eat until they're overweight because they want to be overweight. So there's something going on there. And I think it's our food supply. So I blame them. I blame big food more than I blame people for overeating. Yes, you could learn to eat less. It's a thing. But by far, the biggest problem is that the food industry is poisoning us. By far. So I hold my anger for the root cause, not the people who are doing their best. So, but if you're Trump, people don't treat him the same way. And he himself is carrying a few extra pounds. And so when somebody who's carrying extra weight goes after somebody for carrying extra weight, and their name is Trump, and you know the spirit in which he's doing it, it just sounds different. But don't do that. So the next time you've got some opportunity to mock people for their weight, don't do it. Have a little bit of empathy. Nobody wants to be carrying unhealthy weight. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the best show you're ever going to see today. And I'm going to say bye to the people on X and YouTube and Rumble. I will tell you, if you saw the Dilbert comic today, Wally is explaining to Ashok that if somebody gives you criticism, that's called constructive criticism. If you give somebody else criticism, that's called projecting. And then Wally summarizes in the third panel, and he tells Ashok, basically, you just want to stay away from people. So also, I'm working on the Dilbert calendar, the physical Dilbert calendar for 2025. I've got a meeting right after this, phone meeting, and making the final plans and designs, and you'll be able to buy it, but it'll only be from a website, not from Amazon. I'll let you know more about that as it develops. And thanks for joining. Buy my book, God's Debris. It's changing people's lives. And now I'm going to just talk to the locals people privately. See you tomorrow, everybody else.